everybody all set up with your shot, or you're still working on it? Okay, great. We'll go ahead and kick it off. My name's Elena Ladd. I'm the Chief Communication Officer for MISD, and just want to start off by thanking you guys all for coming and for your coverage of these events. Yesterday was certainly a frightening day for many in our community, but we are so thankful that thanks to the response from law enforcement, from our staff, from our students, that it had a safe and speedy ending. Seated up here at the table with me are Mr. James Riggin, our Chief Operations Officer, Sergeant Loya and Chief Barclay of the Midland ISD Police Department, Mr. Jeff Horner, who's our Executive Director of Secondary Schools, and Mrs. Misty Ring, who's our Associate Principal at Midland High. We're going to let Chief Barclay walk us through what happened yesterday, step by step, and then we'll be available for any questions.
Good morning. I'm Chief Arthur Barclay, been with the district approximately a year and a half at this point. At approximately 3:15 p.m. on Thursday, January the 23rd, a Crime Stoppers tip was received which stated that a boy had pulled out a gun and pointed it at another boy at Midland High School. The tipster was on campus and believed to be a credible witness. At 3:30 p.m., the campus was placed in lockdown as a Midland ISD and Midland Police Department response team did a room-to-room building search for what was believed to be an armed student. Response team officers had a name and description of the suspect student during this search. At approximately 4:40, the suspect student was located inside of an upstairs classroom and detained for further investigation. No weapon was recovered from him at that time. At approximately 4:58 p.m., the campus lockdown was released. During the duration of the incident, outside traffic near the campus had to be diverted until about 5:35 p.m. by the Midland Police Department and DPS. When receiving active threat calls upon school campuses, the goal of law enforcement is to resolve the situation in the safest possible manner for students, faculty, and first responders on scene. The first-hand Crime Stoppers tip received weighted heavily on how response team officers conducted their search at that time. While the lockdown was prolonged due to the search process, the incident was concluded successfully.
Was there ever any gun recovered at all? Or
No gun was recovered at the scene, but the investigation is ongoing.
do you believe that it was a false report at this time?
You know, the information when I spoke with the tipster on scene appeared to be a credible tip. The tipster stuck by and waited and allowed law enforcement officers to speak with him at the time in order to be able to confirm that the tip was credible. And we felt it to be a credible tip at that time, and we felt that there was a gun involved.
If it turns out that it was not a credible tip and it ended up being a false report, will there be charges against the person?
There's a good chance that that may be the case, you know, but at this time we don't have anything that indicates that is the case.
Was this tipster a student or an adult?
That information is part of the investigation, and we don't want to release that at this time, you know, especially if it's a Crime Stoppers tip. We don't pass that information on.
From the tip, was it said that the student with the gun was in school or on campus?
Yes, the tip stated that the student was on campus at the time.
Is everything back to normal back at the school, or is there special procedures going on?
That's a question that would be better for administration to handle.
Midland High School's back on a regular schedule today. We did provide counselors on campus in case we had students that sat through the lockdown, you know, in need of any kind of counseling. But all the start of school was smooth this morning. They're on a regular schedule.
We've heard some concerns from parents and students about the intercom system in the high school. Is this, something that needs to be improved? Is it in sufficient condition?
The intercom system, PA system that's currently on Midland Senior High School campus is more than 20 years old. It's older technology. It's a DOS-based PA system. The system itself, with that type of age of technology, has issues from time to time, and there are portions of the building that were affected without PA in this situation. There have been parts on order because they're not off the shelf and have to be rebuilt. There is a very costly replacement for that technology, and at this point in time, we're still maintaining the older technology on the campus.
Do you know about how many areas of the school didn't receive that intercom call?
I don't know that specifically information.
But just to be clear, because we were aware that there were some malfunctions with the intercom system, I'm very proud of the effort that our administrators took to go throughout the entire school, ensuring that that message of lockdown did get heard by all staff members.
And so you said there were parts on their way or ordered. Do you know when you'll expect to receive
Usually
these
when
parts?
that older technology usually takes anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to get. Parts aren't just on the shelf with 20-year-old technology. It's you have to system boards have to be sent in, rebuilt, and sent back. 2 to 4 weeks for any repairs.
And is that from this date or from a date last week? Or
We're at the mercy of the manufacturer and whoever redoes the parts.
so because of this instance that happened yesterday, will there be any sort of expedite service, or will you reach out to them to say, hey, can
We
you
always
get this
try to expedite the service. It takes bench work to repair those parts that are not replaceable. A bench man has to actually go in and replace the system boards and work on component level for those replacements. So it's not a simple matter of sitting in the old board, getting a new board back. Someone has to sit down in a bench and replace those and rebuild them and then test them.
So about how long does it take to replace?
Typically 2 to 4 weeks to get those back.
But to replace the system, how long does it take for the benchman to replace the system?
Typically 2 to 4 weeks, the whole process.
Is there a consideration about putting in metal detectors in the school system?
Yeah, at this time, that hasn't been something that's been discussed because there's a lot of things that need to be considered before you implement a metal detector program within a school district, and a lot of that stuff is things that probably needs to be considered by the superintendent and the school board, and so far we haven't been having those discussions.
And what are some of those things that need to be considered?
There's a lot of, whenever you put in metal detectors for any purpose, you have to consider the time factor involved in, say, processing students through a metal detector. If you have, say, a 2,500 student campus population, then that takes a period of time. And you have to be able to do like when you go through an airport, or if you go through Dallas Cowboys Stadium, you'll see how that process works, and it's a time-consuming process. So that's something that has to be considered before you consider a metal detector program.
So technically you're relying on Crime Stopper tips?
Not necessarily, no. Whenever we get incidents that occur on campus, or we believe are occurring on campus, we look into those incidents as they occur. And we really don't rely on just Crime Stopper tips. We rely on a lot of different things. And a lot of them, the things that we do rely on, involve our school resource officers. It involves the teachers being proactive and paying attention to what's going on a day-to-day basis when it comes to access control into and out of the school, things of that nature.
Were there any injuries during the lockdown?
No injuries at all.
So the student that was taken into custody yesterday, was he allowed to go back to school today?
No, he was not.
Okay, and do you know for how long he won't be able to go back to school?
That would be an administration question.
We're still continuing to investigate the right right now, what we know about that student is he was just in the wrong place. I mean, all the information we have is in the wrong place. There may be disciplinary consequences for in the classroom he was supposed to, but unless we turn up additional information through the investigation, that's yet to be determined anything additional. So.
Would it be safe to term this as, you know, an overreaction, or how would you define this situation?
So we never take it lightly going into a lockdown.
On track where the student went, so that we could know exactly which areas needed to be searched for this possible weapon.
So in the areas where the intercom system was not working, administrators had to go door to door to let teachers know that you all were in a lockdown?
Yes, ma'am. That's what we did.
But you don't know how many classrooms that administrators went to?
I really don't know the number of how many classrooms weren't working, but it was enough that we, went throughout the whole building with a team of administrators in order to make sure everybody knew we were in a lockdown and the lockdown was effective. So.
And how long do you think that took? I mean, what would be your estimate for the time that it took to go door to door to fill that lockdown?
I don't have a time frame that it would take. It definitely, they did it. They knew because we've had these parts ordered, and they knew the telecenter wasn't working. They knew to get out there quickly. So it was. I'd say there's a slight delay in getting it out, but it wasn't a long delay. So.
And again, what I was so pleased to see is that technology, as we all know, can be our best friend, or it can let us down at times. But because the staff had been trained and practiced on our standard response protocols, they did what was necessary to follow those, to communicate with law enforcement very quickly, and to take those necessary actions.
Sure, but a 20-year-old intercom system, I mean, when did you all decide to replace it? How long has this been in the works to replace the intercom system?
It's not been in the works. All those telecenters were installed in secondary schools over 20 years ago. So it's not just one system. We have we have several systems in our district that they're all in need of repair or replacement.
About how much money does it cost to replace these systems?
Just to replace the technology that is there at Midland High School right now, about $420,000. It with new equipment.
We've seen just an increasing number of students being arrested lately with bringing weapons to campus and making threats. Is anything being done about that? I mean, is there increased security for anything? You know what I'm saying?
Was there a
Counseling?
specific incident that you could, express to me so that I can kind of, I know we've been doing a lot of things and we haven't had any more threats this year than we've had last year.
I think what you might be seeing is that we have been increasing our efforts to be transparent and communicate with parents as even possible threats are investigated on campus. That's just part of what we want to do to communicate with those families so that they're getting the accurate information.
And the state law requires that whenever we receive a threat that we believe to be credible, that we pass that on to parents, and so we do whenever that occurs.
I've just add, when we adopted the standard response protocol and trained in August, we very specifically communicated to students expectations on behavior, that we take threats seriously. And so, verbal threats, whether they're just or not, we have been practicing and working with students and parents that all threats are treated serious. So when a true threat comes around, that we're practiced and ready for it. So we have made a very conscious effort to communicate to parents and students that threats won't be tolerated, and will not only use the full extent of the law, but full extent of the student code of conduct, which is anywhere from expulsion for 180 days for a gun to using DAP for verbal threats. So.
This money for the new intercom system, would any of that possibly be put into a new bond, or is there an infrastructure problem with any of these systems?
The money for replacement for not only the system at Midland High School and the systems at all secondary schools was included in the 2019 bond. Not only just the replacement of the systems, but to upgrade the entire system of components that would include alarms, cameras, PAs, room-to-room phone system, classroom enhancement. The technology has advanced so much that it's not a simple system, but all those systems for our secondary schools was included in the 2019 bond.
Okay.
It's a sizable number.
The student who was accused of the tipsters that he had a gun, you said he was not allowed to go to school today. Is he going to be allowed until the investigation's done, or is he not allowed back on campus?
Once the conclusion of the investigation is determined, then we'll make a decision at that time based upon what the investigation shows. But right now, that would be an administrative decision, and they can make that decision regardless of whether or not we file a charge or not.
What about the tipster? Is he back on campus?
The tipster, I can't really release that information because I'm not saying it was a student.
Okay.
How many officers are at Midland High that are in schools in that particular school?
How many students?
Officers.
Well, how many officers? We have one officer that's assigned to that school full-time.
And from the time of the lockdown to the end of the lockdown, how long did that take?
Yeah, the exact time on the period.
About an hour and a half, but then the perimeter was held slightly longer so we could coordinate the buses getting in and a controlled release of the students.
Going back to the question about the intercom system, you said it was a significant portion of the bond. Do you have maybe a ratio or percentage at all?
Well, the new bond included more than just replacement of the PA system within the campus. Today's security and technology includes door access control, enhanced video systems, phone systems that are interactive with PA and with the campus police and security, district security. It's a much more robust systems that you put in campuses now if we were going in to replace a major replacement to the system. And when it could easily be several $1 million for every campus to replace and to enhance a campus.
So.
I do not have
all
a
of those?
specific number right
Okay.
now, but it's a significant cost to enhance a building for security, video, technology, door enhancements, because it's not just a locking system as a door, it's also to redo the door to accept the enhancements. So it's very complicated and extremely expensive.
And that's something that we would look at for all of our secondary
Yes.
schools, not just Midland High.
Right. And so if the intercom system had worked throughout the school yesterday, would you have used it? And if so, how would that look like?
I have to refer to Jeff on that one. I know they would used it, yes.
Absolutely. If
And
we,
it was used except
if
for
we had the
Sundays.
technology that our elementaries have, we would have pushed the button and every door would have locked in the entire building. Right now, there's 60 entrances and exits to Midland High School, and it takes a good while to get about to those, whether the PA systems are working or not. So absolutely, we would have gone in lockdown with the push of a button had we had technology that's available, many new campuses have today. So.
Security technology, for the question to go back, security technology is more than just a PA system in new buildings, just like that. The one button push down in our elementaries versus a multi-function process now at our older secondary schools.
We got a picture of an email sent by the associate principal with a picture of a suspect. Is that a confirmed email?
When we went into lockdown, and it took longer to find the student than we would have liked, we circulated a picture of that student using a current picture and an old picture we had. So we did circulate that just to ensure that we could be as quick as possible trying to identify that with staff.
So that is confirmed then?
We did send that email, yeah.
When the student was found in that second floor room, what was he doing? Was he participating in the lockdown like everyone else?
Student was in lockdown. The student had actually been, the reason a delay in finding the student had been tardy to that class. We went into lockdown right at the beginning of that class, and part of the protocol, he was not doing anything other than what we would normally do. So he was swept into a classroom that we took longer than we would like to find him. So
Was he aware that everyone was looking for him, or no?
he was not. No, he was not aware. He was not trying to hide, or there was no ill intentions on the student trying to.
He wasn't trying to avoid us.
Avoid.
Yeah.
No.
So going forward, what did you learn from this experience yesterday?
So I think one of the takeaways is the importance of practicing our drills, staying current with our SRP, and keeping everyone familiar with that. I think that was a real, something that went well, was following those procedures and protocols we do have. I think our coordination among our agencies, among staff and personnel is another takeaway that went well. But after an incident like this, of course, we always look back, see what else could be done better next time and areas to improve.
I guess what are maybe some of those areas you'll improve going forward?
We'll definitely debrief between administration and police department, make sure that our communications were as quick and fast as possible. We'll debrief with the campus and improve training based on what we come up with after debriefing. And I guess finally, interagency will debrief overall just to make sure that the response was the best, most appropriate response based on the information we had at the time.
And when do you plan on debriefing with everyone?
We've started that process already, so we started last night and we'll continue. So we've already started.
I think an important portion of the debriefing should be to include the Midland Police Department, since they work with us so closely on threat response on school campuses, and so we're going to invite them into those discussions as well.
Is there any law enforcement intelligence going on? If you get somebody gives you a tip on something, is there any any type of intelligence gathering during any period of time during the day?
If it's something having to do with something that needs to be investigated, yes, sir, there is.
Is there some kind of counseling going on for the students, to deal with this incident?
We had extra counselors at the campus, as well as the 6 campus counselors already there prepared. We actually walked through the building this morning, and there wasn't any students taking advantage of that, but they'll be there available throughout the day if they're needed.
About how many extra counselors are there?
We had 2 there extra this morning, 2 that were trained as crisis counselors.
And standard, you have 6, you said?
Yes, ma'am, on the campus itself.
Is there any kind of protocol within the counseling system that if a student wants to go to a counselor, that he's actually going to a counselor rather than trying to skip class?
Absolutely. We actually, within our protocols, when we have something we believe may be traumatic to a student, we have a protocol where a student's escorted down with somebody from the classroom. They may exhibit need to the counseling center or to a private center off the counseling center.
What advice, I guess, do you have for students going through this?
My first advice is, we want to continue to ask students that when they see something, to say something. That's a huge part. They're always closest to any alleged student, incident, and able to divert or solve problems fastest. So first, see something, say something. We want to definitely communicate that. We definitely, appreciative of our students were very cooperative. They sat for almost 90 minutes in a lockdown, and a lockdown is, a traumatic event. Talk to a significant other, talk to parents, or talk to somebody they know at the school if they are, feeling, nervousness or feeling like they're being affected by the events of yesterday.
Can you explain why in the process, so I had heard some concerns from parents that they weren't able to call their students, but they were able to text them. Could you explain why it is they can't call during this time?
Yeah, when we go into a lockdown, we literally, we train staff, part of the protocol in a lockdown. It is pretty much blackout. We lock the doors, turn out the lights, and move away from windows and any kind of an entrance. In the event there is an active shooter or an active offender, that's the protocol. And so when cell phone lights are on, you just give a notification to a possible aggressor out in the hallway, there's somebody in that room. Or cell phones are ringing, those kind of things. So we ask that parents understand that protocol, because it could put their student at risk if they're ringing their student in the middle of a class when they're in lockdown. So it is part of the standard response protocol, and that's a national standard, not just a Midland ISD standard.
And what would you like to say to Midland ISD parents who, were experiencing all of this yesterday?
But first, I appreciate their patience. We let out, our normal release is 4:15, and we let students out about 5 o'clock. So I appreciate the patience, not only of our parents, but the community, because, traffic was shut down outside. So I appreciate that. If they have any concerns over how we conduct those protocols, ask that they please reach out to us and let us talk to them and make sure they, are comfortable with how we do those things, how we operate through the protocol. It's a very important factor that a parent understands that a lockout is, if we're in a lockout, is for a reason, and we absolutely want to go through that protocol